Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello everybody, it's time for your weekly installment of Barnyard Language, where Katie probably tells me that they're cropping and I tell her again that it's too wet. So Katie, are you guys doing some cropping or planting?
Well, Arlene, I asked you to record this update early so that I could go out and mow our yard because it's supposed to rain every day for like the next 2 weeks. And if I don't mow today, we're legitimately going to be bailing the front yard.
Oh, that sounds fitting.
Several years ago, we put in a new septic tank in the front yard and a new drain field, which is a lot of space. And so my husband, in a totally understandable money-saving maneuver, just seeded the bare patch with what was left after seeding the hayfield. But now it means that a large chunk of our front yard does actually just come up in clover and alfalfa.
Nice.
Which is lovely, but it's real obvious when it gets tall that it's not grass. And also even
It doesn't quite look like the rest of the grass.
Yeah, even the actual grass is getting tall enough that we're going to start, losing small children in there pretty soon, I think. So I haven't gone out yet to feed lambs their lunch, but we are down to one ewe that has not lambed. So we're all like at her. Our listeners can't see, but I'm giving like real intense watching you face here.
Yes.
We had a second lamb born with a facial, like a cranial birth defect, which was a first. Both lambs were stillborn, but if anyone has experience with that, let me know, because we've never had 2 of anything with the same birth defect. I mean, birth defects happen, but this is the first time we've ever had 2 of the same. The oats are in. I think Jim got all the hay ground seeded, reseeded, whatever. We have not started corn and beans. Too wet, too cold. Not, we always have folks here who just push it earlier and earlier and earlier, but then you get problems.
It's a risk. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, right?
On years that it works pretty well. On years that it doesn't, it tends to not work pretty spectacularly a lot of the time. So anyway, kids have their spring choir concert tonight, which I'm sure is going to be adorable. Not a lot else. I guess I feel like there's something else, but it's gone now. Oh, somebody disked our mailbox last week. I think disked, probably. They didn't combine it, but
Right. It got pulverized anyway.
yeah. I know it was an accident.
It wasn't a baseball bat.
No, I don't believe so. I'm a little bummed though because I had used my Cricut to like cut fancy numbers and put our names on the front, and I put way too much time into making our mailbox pretty.
Those are the ones that definitely get mangled.
Upside, mail carrier hasn't brought me any bills in a couple days.
There you go.
Downside, they can't bring me anything else either. So it's on my list for today to go put the new mailbox up.
Yes, and I have some, which is a big drag.
At some point, they will get mad that we don't have a mailbox. So, how are things at your place, Arlene?
Well, like I said at the top, we are still too wet to do anything. So it's not been a continuous rain. It's just, like it dries out enough where you think, oh, maybe tomorrow we could start, and then it rains that day. So nothing is happening yet. But until it gets dry enough for those big tractors and spreaders to get out in the fields, we are still in pause. So as we're recording, it's the end of April, so it's not mission critical yet. Obviously it'd be nice to get out there, but we will just continue to be patient. I'm sure that it'll warm up and dry up eventually. In farm-related and family-related news, I know that I had alluded to the fact a while ago that there were some heavy things going on in our family, and one of them was the fact that my husband's grandma, who is a wonderful lady and who lived in the house that we currently live in for 60 plus years of her life. She moved in here after she got married, and then we moved in here after she decided to move to the retirement home in town. She passed away a few days ago. So it's sad, but also, a time to celebrate her. She was not quite 100. She was getting close, but so she passed in her 100th year, but she was still 99. So I'm sure she's a little upset about that, but I mean, couldn't be helped. So the next week or so, we'll be spending lots of time with family and friends and neighbors and all those types of people, because she was also the kind of lady who had planned her funeral and all of the events surrounding it to the way that she wanted it, and she was a lady who liked to plan events. So we've got lots of occasions to see our family and friends in the next few days. And so I've also been acquiring clothing, because my kids dress up now and then, but to have multiple funeral related dress up type events for children who seem to keep growing is a bit challenging. And also, anyone who has boys in that not yet men's clothing size, but not little kid size, will know the struggle of trying to track down clothing for children in that age range. Boys specifically, because somehow the boys that age need clothes mostly at all, but especially ones that look nice. So I spent a lot of time over the last few days trying to track down some just dress pants and collared shirts, which seems like not that big of a stretch, but it has been not that easy to do. So that's been where some of our energy has gone the last little while.
It seems like in more small town rural shopping situations too, like I can buy a dress for my daughter 365 days a year. But things like button down shirts for little boys or for bigger boys is Easter, Christmas.
Yeah, and you got to hit the week just right, not too close to that occasion.
Yeah, I mean, you might be able to find like a polo shirt or some like pull on khakis other times of the year. Even like the school concert listing said, please wear your best clothes. And I was like, so my daughter will be basically ready for black tie.
Yes, she's got all the glitter.
And my son will hopefully not be covered in jello. Like, this is where we're at.
Yeah, and maybe his pants won't have holes in the knees. Yeah. And we even drove, like, we're not all that far from, some pretty major shopping centers. But yesterday I went to 5 different stores and only found one where I could find it was even worth acquiring. So that's pretty frustrating when you're even in, specialty kids clothes. And it's like, do we not think that children in the range of, 10 to 15 still need to wear clothes? I don't know where you're supposed to find items for them, but it was not in the places I was shopping anyway.
When it's so frustrating too, when it's a specific event that is time limited. I mean, it's not like you knew about this 6 months ago and then put it off until
Yeah.
a few days before. And that it's no fun to shop when you're on a mission like that. Because I mean, it's fun to
Yeah, that's true. When you're looking for something specific, you never find it.
it is at least less irritating when it's like, oh, my kid's outgrowing everything and I can afford to buy new clothes and I can go to Target and make a mom day of it and just buy a shitload of cute t-shirts. Like, that's not that bad. But when it is like,
Oh, sure. Flaunting about the fact that you have a Target.
we may not have health care or like lots of other things, Arlene, but we do
It's
have
true.
Target. Damn it. That's something.
You do have Target. All right. I can cross the border for that, I suppose. I'll keep my health care. All right. Well, shall we introduce our guest for this week?
I think we should.
Today, we are happy to be talking to Tanner Winterhof, who's joining us from Iowa. So I'm outnumbered today with 2 Iowans on the call.
Arlene, I'm going to break in. Tanner, you're about 10 miles from my hometown, I think. I grew up outside of Cambridge. So your kids are probably going to the same school system that I did.
We're not going to talk about who we know yet. We'll do that off air.
Okay, fine. We'll get there. We'll get there.
We know how country people are, right?
That's awesome.
So, Tanner, we always start our interviews with the same question, and this is your way to introduce yourself to our listeners. So we always ask, what are you growing? So for our farmers, that's crops and livestock, but also kids, businesses, careers, all kinds of other stuff. So, Tanner, what are you growing?
Yeah, I'm going to start off by saying I'm growing a network We love the audience that Farm for Profit has built, not only of just farmers and young ag professionals, but also the sponsors and creators that we've connected with, like you guys. So I'm going to start off saying that that's something that I get to control on the growing wise, is growing a movement of helping farmers and business owners achieve higher levels of profitability, but also growing a community where I live in Huxley with my wife and two daughters. So working there in a growing area. Alluded to that Kate said a growing school district. It's a lot of fun there. But like I said, two daughters. We are 8 and almost 10. So now we're working on growing our skills in softball, as we always start here in Iowa way too early. I don't know why track and golf and softball have to start when it's freezing cold and make it miserable at the beginning of the year. But I am a farm kid, grew up a farm kid. So then my parents and my in laws are growing corn and soybeans, which is typical for Iowa. My family has a finishing hog operation, and my in laws have a fat cattle operation. So I get to spend a lot of time either behind a steering wheel or holding the end of a wrench at either one of those farms whenever I'm not podcasting and running Farm for Profit Media. So lots of things growing. It's one of the best jobs ever. You get to set your own schedule. Sometimes that means late at night or early in the morning. And other times it means I get to stare out of one of the best offices in the world, and that's sitting in a tractor or a combine or a semi, getting to grow what feeds the world. So lots of things growing in my life.
Yeah, that is very cool. That is a lot of different growth.
Arlene, for our non-Midwestern listeners, I want to say that Tanner is probably the most, I was going to say stereotypical, but I'll go with quintessential Iowa farmer that we have had on this show, and quite possibly the most Midwestern person that we've had on this show. And that's a compliment. It is. But
Yeah, and Katie's always kind of trying to explain to me what Midwest actually means, because she just uses as a verb and a noun, and and like basically it fits in everywhere. And I'm still working on figuring out what it means. There does seem to be a lot of similarities to small town Ontario, though, too. So sounds like just country to me.
Hey, I would say that's probably pretty accurate all across your comments there. Yes, our families don't do anything out of the box for Midwest. Like I said, corn, soybeans, play with some cover crops, but then, yes, small town anywhere, whether it's small town Iowa or small town USA, absolutely. Send the kids to school, let them participate in everything from 4 H to sports to church, and parents are the ones that power all of those things together. So, yes, pretty standard.
Yeah, that's right. So, as you mentioned, you're one of the hosts of Farm for Profit podcast, and I love your tagline, which is, if you aren't farming for profit, you won't be farming for long. But one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot lately is that a lot of farm families are dependent on off farm jobs or off farm income. And I know I looked up the Canadian stats the other day, and 99% of Canadian farms are generating at least some of their income from off farm sources. And I'm sure that it's similar in the US. So when it comes to families that farm, do you have any thoughts on the fact that while farming is such a big part of our culture, it doesn't seem like farming is the only thing that is supporting us?
Yeah, I looked up that stat. I appreciated you giving me a little bit of heads up on that one for the US. And as of 2022, the Bureau of Statistics stated that 84% of US farm families receive some of their farm income from off the farm, and more than 50%, it's a majority of their net farm income or net household income is coming from off the farm. So more than half, most of the money is coming from somebody else. I mean, it's sad, but you can see why it's trending that way. I mean, if you are a consumer of agriculture or any industry, you understand that margins over the historical last 40 years have just continued to compress, and farms have had to get larger because the dollar per acre amount is smaller. So you need more acres, or you need more cows, or you need more hogs in order to make the same amount of money. But making the same amount of money doesn't do you any good because inflation has caused the cost of living to go up. So yeah, it's the same way though. If you think about it in regular household incomes, how many 30 to 40 years ago households had more than one income earner? And now we've got both parents working outside of the home or part-time jobs, or we love on Farm for Profit to feature strong women, and the fact that some of the majority income earners in households now are females. And that's just not something that used to happen.
Yeah, I feel like it used to be typical. I think we're probably close to the same age. Maybe the mom substitute taught or something like that, had something for just some extra money. But now, I mean, I was trying to think the other day, I think I know one family in our area that gets all of their income from farm. And I know a fair number of farm families, and I think especially in the States, it's health insurance too. I know a lot of folks who have off farm work for insurance, but yeah, it's scary to think what the next crunch is going to bring because there's nobody left to go get a town job. If all the adults are already working in town, there's, you know, we're running out of options for people to go get town jobs to support our farming habits.
Well, and that's exactly right. I grew up with my mom working at the local bank early on, and then took a period of time to raise us, and then was part-time church secretary, just like you said, for a little extra cash. And it is quite interesting as you think about where it's gone and where it might be going. It almost feels like we drove ourselves there, but what's it going to take to break it? And do people actually want to go back? My wife loves her job and couldn't imagine not doing anything. I'm the same way. I don't like not doing something. So I think a lot of culture today is busy. But when I look at some of the guests that we've had, when you do 104 interviews a year, you get to talk to a lot of people. And what we're seeing now is a lot of spouses, even if they are on farm, they're pulling two wages off of that operation. Whether the wife is a bookkeeper or lead salesperson or one of the main operators, it's hard to find labor. So now we've even backfilled the spots of spousal and family support just to keep things moving forward, which is almost a reverse, right? That's what we used to have kids for, was to get things done on the farm. Now we want to bring as many family members in because it's hard to find help.
I think it's pretty telling that, you used to have 12 kids to get everything done, but now you just have, you know, parents. And I think that's one of the things we really try to touch on in the show too, is the pressure from the older generation, when you hear, well, we didn't need daycare, we didn't need help with this, that, and the other, we didn't need off-farm jobs. Like, but you farmed at a time when you could actually support a family from the farm, or one person, generally the dad could take a union welding job or something and make good money, and that was enough to keep everybody home and to keep everybody supported. And it's not true anymore.
Yeah, we've interviewed a lot of people that talked about their winter job. They had a welding job or did something in town during the winter. And correct, at that time, that was enough money they could save up to satisfy a year. You can't do that anymore. You can't just work for 3 months and put it back into the operation.
Yeah, I feel like when I was a kid in central Iowa, at least, the school bus driver was the big dad job, because you could drive bus in the morning, farm all day, drive bus in the afternoon, farm at night, and, make apparently enough money to make it worth dealing with that many children, which I don't know how they dealt with it, but
I look at my own kid's bus driver and think I don't want that job for sure. So, on this topic of farm families and making decisions about, I've been thinking about how we manage family priorities and farm priorities when often as a family, I don't know if we're being completely honest about whether the farm is in fact profitable, or whether those funds that are coming from off farm should be reinvested in a farm that isn't profitable, or where do we draw that line between what's the families and what is the farms, especially when we talk about, there are multiple generations who are involved in decision making, but then sometimes whose income goes where is a little bit of a harder decision. So do you have any thoughts on how we kind of keep that farm income and family income at least streamed so we can track it and make sense of it?
Yeah, every one of the shows that we record, our profit shows that come out, we challenge our listeners at the end and then summarize the episode. So it gives them a little bit of kind of I know you might have listened partially all 45 minutes to an hour, but here's the nuts and bolts. And one of the most common challenges that we provide is for our listeners to run their farm like a business. And to us, what that means is if you've got an off farm job, you understand that you have an accounting department, you have an accounts payable, and you have an accounts receivable. You have somebody that's managing your bills and your income. And they are responsible for putting reports together that analyze if you are profitable or not. And we've had many episodes on accounting practices that you can run it on an enterprise basis, making sure that one crop to the next crop or one group of cattle to the next group of cattle are profitable. But as David, one of my co-hosts, would say, the data is the key. The data is the key to the future of your farm. And if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage back out. So ultimately, it's not a fun, sexy job. But there's a reason on Farm for Profit that we have continued to preach over and over and over again that you have to know. You have to know what the cost of your crop is going to be. And we get a lot of feedback that, oh, but that changes. If I decide to spray fungicide, well, yeah, that's fine. If you knew what your dollar amount for a break even was before you sprayed fungicide, it's an easy calculation to add that. Well, I don't know what I'm going to sell my crop for. Well, that's fine. Every time you sell a crop or make a sale, you factor that in to where once you have your baseline built with accurate information, that makes everything else so much easier. And the next biggest thing that we preach is having an advisory team put together. And that's where people can help you do this. If you don't like doing it, that's fine. Not everybody's a data and numbers geek like I am. If you don't like that, find somebody that, for relatively inexpensive compared to the opportunity cost, can provide you this information. And that makes every decision so much easier. But if you think about some of the best businesses in your community that are being run, they have a CFO, a chief financial officer. They have someone that's in the monetary side of that business that is not the owner. Typically, it's not the owner. It's somebody out there that can, without emotion, tell you what is happening. So if you can't get yourself out of the family farm emotional side of things, it's okay to ask for help. And it doesn't mean you need somebody full time, but that's what we talk about on Farm for Profit. If you can get key data that's accurate and you can get the ability to make the analyzing and adjustment parts easy, then you can take the emotion out of it and really draw down as to, yes, should we be putting money back at something that's not profitable? Oh, we've always raised cattle. Well, that's fine. If that's the weakest link of your farm, maybe we need to look at custom feeding instead of owning the cattle. You can still have cattle and still enjoy the aspect of raising those, but maybe do it at a profitable margin or a consistent margin rather than, having a leaky hole that you can't plug.
Well, Tanner, I find it interesting, one of the idea of outsourcing this and just normalizing outsourcing the book work too, because I think there's such a stereotype that the mom will just do it. And I don't know about Arlene or your wife or any of the other wives out there, but I am not just like blessed with the magical bookkeeping gene. Like, it didn't, on my wedding day, nobody handed me a box and said, here is your bookkeeping skills. You now know what the hell you're doing. I can do math, but if I wanted to be a bookkeeper, I'd be a bookkeeper. I wouldn't be farming, and two, I think your farm doesn't have to be profitable. Like, watch me just coming in and, hot take on this. But then you have to be open and accepting of the fact that you have a really expensive hobby. And, if you can justify that and you can afford it, go to town. People have all sorts of really expensive hobbies. But you need to be honest about the fact that, instead of collecting boats or whatever other things people do, we farm for a hobby. So I don't know what that might be, but, you have an expensive hobby and that's fine. But don't pretend like it's going to make you money.
That's right. Knowing that it is a hobby or knowing that you have to supplement. I keep referring to my co-host. So the best thing about Farm for Profit is we have three of us. And when you look at our logo insignia, it's three little ovals that all overlap in the middle. It doesn't mean anything else to anybody except to us, because that's three unique opinions that come together on Farm for Profit. And it's silly and stupid, and we actually don't like it as far as design wise, but it means a lot to us. And for example, Dave's an auctioneer and realtor. That is his day job. That's his bread-winning number one spot. But he farms on the side. And we know through conversations that that farm is not profitable. It's just not at scale to where it is not profitable. He knows exactly what that hobby costs him, and he's fine with that. Just like you said, it could be dirt biking or ATVing or RV traveling. Whatever your hobby is, great. Enjoy it, love it, go do it.
Our goal as podcasters is to create a program that makes you feel less alone as a farming, ranching, or homesteading parent, but we can't do it alone.
Supporting Barnyard Language on Patreon helps us cover production costs and ensures the future of the show, but you'll also gain access to exclusive perks and behind-the-scenes content.
Your support enables us to continue bringing you the thought-provoking conversations and inspiring stories week after week. So if you find value in what we're doing and want to be part of the Barnyard community, head over to patreon.com/barnyardlanguage and choose a tier that suits you. So when we're talking about outsourcing or having relationships with people who can help us with the financial side, we have a great relationship with our banker, and yet I feel like every time I go into those meetings, it's kind of a combination of like, what am I going to find out? Not that I don't really know, but like maybe they're going to find something that I don't know about. And then the confusion around the terms that every year I kind of have to reteach myself before our annual review. It's like, what does that actual ratio mean again? I know whether it's good or bad, but so how do we kind of develop those relationships with our financial people? Because they are the ones that help us to really understand our businesses. And when it comes down to it, they're the ones we need to talk to if we want to expand or change or make decisions into the future.
Yeah, so I spent 15 years in banking, and just recently within the last 12 months has dove into Farm for Profit media full time. So the number one thing that I tell people is bankers are people too. And we can be intimidating, right? Because we live the numbers every single day. And when we throw out, your current ratio is below water, or we are looking at your working capital and it's insufficient. All of a sudden you have big words, and it's almost as bad as the insurance industry. Insurance has so many acronyms that you have no idea what they even stand for. So when you do your annual renewal one time, it's not fair to you to have to brush up on what these things are on an annual basis because it's the only time that you do it. So back to the advisory team that we preach on Farm for Profit is, hey, talk to your banker more than once a year. It doesn't cost you. 99.9% of banking relationships don't charge you by the hour. So there is absolutely no reason that you can't have a meeting with your banker quarterly, and that gives you a quarterly refresher as to what a current ratio is. Or put them on your advisory team. Give them a formal responsibility, typically for free, that you want from them as an expectation. If you put them on your advisory team, think of a board of directors for a corporation. You don't have to get fancy and have a big boardroom table like I'm sitting around to have these meetings. Give them a responsibility that says, hey, I want you to call me every quarter. I would like to have a conversation within 5 days of the 15th of the month every quarter, and I want you to ask me the key questions to update my balance sheet. Let's do a 30-minute check-in. All of a sudden you get a refresher on where your position sits. They can give you a little bit of an insight as to if something's changed or is alarming. And then that way you've done 3 meetings before you got to your annual review, and it shouldn't feel any different than the other quarterly meetings. It should be stress-free. I'm using air quotes for those that can't see. Stress-free, you should feel a lot more comfortable because you've practiced. What other athlete in the entire world participates in one game a year and doesn't practice? What actor doesn't recite their lines and shows up on set? You can't be that hard on yourself to where you are expected to know everything one time a year without studying and without stress. The other thing that I like to talk about is a banker on the bench. If you feel embarrassed due to the relationship that you have with your current banker or the banker that your parents had that you have, it's okay to find somebody else that is in the area that you think your personalities are going to match and put them on your advisory team. What a disarming way to approach somebody new than to tell them that you've got a role for them. Because most people are going to feel honored. Yeah, some will be frustrated. Some will say, "Oh, I ain't got time for this. I can't do anything like this." But if you take the right approach and make it an honor that you respect them and their opinion, now you've got two sets of eyes looking at your number, and the banker on the bench has no implication to you. If they say no, who cares? Right now, you don't. Or if they say something looks bad, who cares? But you, you're the one that cares because this gives you an opportunity to improve or understand or correct before you get to that annual meeting and you don't feel really bad. And the bonus, maybe you like the banker on the bench better and they become your new banker.
So this is some pretty serendipitous timing because our banker was out here yesterday. We were trying to get him to ear tag lambs with us, but
I'm just glad your banker was out there.
That's not his role in your advisory panel, Katie.
yeah, decided he had some other stuff to do.
Tagging lambs wasn't on the list.
It might be. Well, it could be. I think it's easy to forget that just like politicians, our banker works for us. You know, if we don't use their bank, they don't make any money. And it's easy to get intimidated by them. And I know I find our banker kind of intimidating because if, he decides not to renew our loan, we're kind of up a creek.
But are you? Because there's 14 other banks, I assume, within driving distance.
Well, so this is the other question. A lot of our small town ag-focused banks have consolidated or gone out of business or both, And also, how do you deal with the fact that when, say, your in-laws are involved in the farm business, for example, hypothetically, totally not talking about my own family situation, and they've lived in the same community for 50 plus years. And then there's that, well, this person at this bank did something creepy once, and it might have been 40 years ago. But, you're from Iowa, you get it. We are never talking to this person again, ever. They may have retired 25 years ago, but we are still not going back there. So how do you pick which bank to go with? And what do you, how do you find a good ag lender? Because like the bank I use for my personal banking, I don't think I'd want to use for ag lending because they're not a farm bank.
Yeah, so it goes back to my comment, and I know, and I hate for your audience just to hear me repeat myself, but the more that you treat your farm like a business, you don't need an ag bank because every business has a cycle. If you think about a lawn care company, they don't make money in the winter unless they push snow. They also don't make money in the spring because that's not snowing and that's not grass growing yet. So unless they've diversified their mowing business to be snow removal and landscaping and mowing, there's a lender in that institution that is working with a company that makes all of their money in Iowa between May and September. So for farming, typically you make all of your money from November to March. You just flip-flopped the cycle of a mowing company. And it's relatively the same if you think about the crop that's growing in the field versus the people who own houses that you mow your yard. So if you are running your farm like a business and you've got somebody that is helping you manage your break evens, it's actually to a lender relatively easy industry to get into. Now, if your farm's a little bit more complicated and you're running a Wagyu beef herd or you're running something that is niche and you have to understand different consumer cycles along with that, yes, having an ag background individual is going to help you. But if you've got your operation prepped, and I know this sounds like a far out anomaly, something that I'll never be able to achieve for most of the listeners, but if you can get the basics in place, you don't need an ag banker. But back to your question, how do you choose a bank? You got to interview them. You got to treat them like an employee, just like you said, just like a politician. How did you know who to vote for? Well, You did your research, talked to your friends, found other influential people in the community, and asked around. If it's a family obligation, I don't know how you get past that. Well, we're never talking to the Johnsons again. That's a tough one. But that's the way I would approach it is find somebody who you vibe with, because if you're going to start talking to them on a quarterly basis, you don't want to hate those conversations.
All right, so I'm going to throw one more question in there. How do you deal with, now that off-farm income has become so prevalent, deciding how much of your family income to throw back into the farm? Because I think there can be for so long it was normal that any family income was kind of for vacations and the farm could actually support itself. But now there can be a real common thought that your off-farm income should be supporting the farm. And sometimes that's reasonable and rational, but I also don't want to come sliding into retirement with no money. And, I like having a car that runs, and I like having a roof that doesn't leak, and all the rest of those things. Maybe we will want to go on vacation eventually. That sort of thing.
That answer, unfortunately, won't be straightforward. That's a very honest conversation with your spouse and the other farm members, because to me, the expectation should be that you don't have to supplement the farm. Because if we can identify where the hole is in the bucket on the farm, let's fix the hole. Let's not add more water. Let's figure out why we're not making money. If it comes to a point and you as a household decide that it's a hobby or that you're comfortable, then that's the amount that you supplement. Ultimately, this goes back to Dave Ramsey. If you can put cash in an envelope and at the end of the month still have cash in your envelope after you pay all your bills, you've succeeded. I hate anything else that the man preaches, unfortunately, in the well of financial education. But if you can develop between you and your spouse, you and your partner, you and whoever you are sharing income with, that you can have a surplus of cash at the end of a period, then be happy with it. Make the decision, move forward. If that means that $0 go into the farm from off-farm income, awesome. If that means that 20 grand or 200,000 does, great. That's your choice. Be happy about it with the expectation and live and love.
I was just thinking about, like we talk about childcare, that there's no other business where we would, we don't expect our plumbers to bring their kids with them. I think there's often this feeling of justification about what our family's priorities are when you're farming with other family members as well. And there's nothing that takes you back to being 13 faster than feeling like you have to justify something to your parents.
How you're spending your allowance.
Yeah. Well, it's my allowance. I'll buy video games if I want. I think that's exactly it, Arlene, is it does feel like, well, I can buy $20 worth of candy if I want. And I think too, when you've got that older generation who's been sacrificing for 70 years to keep the farm afloat, and you're saying, no, I'm not throwing all my money at this. Where the money's coming from has changed, where the money is going has changed. And I think a lot of those conversations haven't changed fast enough to keep up with how the financial roles have changed.
So Arlene, fellow Canadian, Elaine Fraze, has been on our podcast a half a dozen times.
I got to see her in person last week.
Yes. And I love her discuss the undiscussable. And she uses BULL at the end because she has a foam bowl that she'll throw at you if you participate in her conversation. But I don't want to keep preaching on this topic, but it will not come easy. Everything I've talked about so far won't come easy. And guess what? That's why we have a 5-year history of Farm for Profit, because people show up every week to listen to more shows because they understand that this wasn't something we fixed as Farm for Profit in 2019. It's still a work in process.
Yeah, and another one of her phrases is clarity is kindness, right? If you can't be clear, then, and that counts for everybody. If you're not clear about your priorities and where the money is going and how it's going to be spent and all of those things and what your expectations are, then everyone's
everyone's running on assumptions, and that doesn't work for anyone, no matter which generation they are. So I'm going to move us into some of our parenting questions, because we like to talk about farms, but we also want to talk about the parenting side of things, because we do both on Barnyard Language. So one of the reasons that Katie and I actually connected and started the show was around that sense of isolation that we both felt as parents raising little people on the farm. And I know that becoming a new parent is often a different experience for fathers and mothers. So I was wondering about, when you reflect on, as you said, it was 10 years ago now, right, that you became a father for the first time. What do you remember being most challenging for you about that time of becoming a new parent and bringing somebody new into your relationship and into your house?
For me, I think it was sitting still. I'm not good at that. Even here, I'm playing with the cord on my headset. I don't sit still. Thank God right now I'm entertained by the conversation, because I would be ready up and moving around. So for me, um, I, I would hold my daughter, and you just hold your daughter and you turn the TV on. For me, that was a huge adjustment. That normally I would come home from work and I would go mow the yard, and I always had a side business, and I would continue to work on my customers financial statements and put projections together, and just I'm a busy person. I'm a farm kid. That's what I grew up with. Is you got up, did some type of chore, went to school, came home, did some type of chore, made sure your homework was done, and then, maybe at the end of that, you did something else to better yourself as an individual. So when you have a kid, I wasn't ready for how much I slowed down. I stopped playing slow pitch softball. I stopped running my mowing and lawn care business. I stopped doing things that I was doing, because I found something else that I loved. I still love mowing the yard. It's one of those instant gratification things. I just thoroughly like my straight lines and my stripes and the peace and quiet to myself. But the crazy thing is, now, 10 years later, it's no longer peace and quiet, but I still love doing it, because I've got one of my daughters running the sticks on my lap, and she's mowing the yard with me. And I just love the fact that she wants to mow with me, that's something that they enjoy. So for me, the hardest thing as a father, because I didn't carry the kid for 9 months, I didn't give birth, I didn't have that initial connection, was, I'm like, tummy time means I got to stay here on the couch and let my daughter just lay on my chest, and I can't do anything for an hour and a half or whatever the nap time is. Like, that was hard. And now, that's one of my favorite things. Now we're 8 and 10, and I'd sit there and, hey, come over here and snuggle. Come over here and let's sit together and do. So it's weird how, when I started doing that was almost painful. Unfortunately, as a dad, you don't have that immediate connection. So you're laying there, and it's just something. I'm being blunt, but it's just something. And then, as they grow their personality, and then as they start speaking, and then as they get to have their own opinions, yeah. Now that tummy time, air quotes again, means a lot more when we can snuggle, even if it's for 3 minutes.
Yeah, you mentioned the word instant gratification too, and I find that parenting is one of those things where that is really lacking, because even once they get bigger and it's busier, and you're spending all your time chasing them, and it it doesn't feel like at the end of the day that you accomplished anything. And I think for a fellow farm kid, that feels challenging too, where you look at your house at the end of the day, or the kitchen sink full of dishes, or whatever is still undone. And even if you had the best day with your kid, it still feels like, oh, I got nothing done. But that connection is not instant gratification. I mean, in that moment it's good, but then it doesn't feel productive. And I think sometimes for farmers that can feel hard to accept, that that the productivity is in the connection and in the relationship, and that doesn't always look like something, in the moment.
I love and hate coaching. Like, I will coach my daughters until I run out of skills to coach them, because I'm not a good bleacher dad. I don't just sit. So for me, if I could do something to be helpful, but we're in softball season right now, and just like you said, we finished an hour and a half practice last night, hour and 15-minute practice, and I come home and my wife goes, "How did that go?" Oh, I don't feel like we learned or gained anything. Just I can't. But then when I look at the beginning of the season, to where some of these girls, including my daughters, couldn't do a task or a skill. And you get to the end of the season and they do it, and they do it really well. It it takes a lot of patience. So I hate the fact that I get so frustrated in the middle of it, but then just love the feeling when it's over and you see that something changed and improved, which is a lot like farming. You probably get frustrated a lot saying, gosh, why is my corn not any taller? Or why is it not any darker green? Why? And you get to harvest and all of a sudden you see the yields coming across your monitor. You just, same thing, you're growing a calf, and even though you look at the calf every single day, all of a sudden it's 1,500 pounds.
Yeah, there are a lot of similarities in farming and parenting for sure.
I feel like, Tanner, part of our motivation too for starting the show is that there's so much pressure on all parents involved, I think, for, well, you should just be more grateful to spend time with your kids. If you're thinking about the farm work that's left to be done, it's because you don't actually love your children enough. Because if you did love your children enough, you would never think about all the shit that is not getting done because you're nap trapped on the couch. And it's not the same as a lot of careers where there is, maybe you're on maternity leave or parental leave or whatever for you Canadians who get these things. But, there's generally nobody else covering your job. It's, if you're not doing it, it's not getting done. And there's living things out there. It's not paperwork. It's, actual animals, actual crops. And for a lot of us, this is, 10 years worth of work that is in this lamb crop or in this corn harvest. And I think people don't get the level of obsessive, creepy dedication that most farmers have to what they're doing, because we would never work this hard to put more money into it from off farm work if we weren't, if we were the sort of people who could just chill on the couch. It'd be a hell of a lot easier to just chill on the couch.
And to me, that's probably my biggest struggle currently in parenting is Farm for Profit is 10 years old. The podcast started in 19, but I started Farm for Profit to try and set myself apart from other bankers in the area. I wanted to be known as an individual who had connections to experts. I don't need to be the expert, but I want to know somebody who is, so I can, provide you some extra benefit. So yes, Farm for Profit is 10 years in the making. It is my baby. And I understand that if I don't respond to an email, or if I don't connect or provide a proposal or solidify a sponsorship or provide ideas, that doesn't get done until I do it. So yes, sometimes I jeopardize the time with my daughters and my wife. Actually, my wife's the one that gets the shit end of the stick, because I will spend time with my daughters before her and love her to death because she saw that and now is an integral part in some of the tasks that I was doing at Farm for Profit. So if we can both be doing things, that gives us that opportunity to have time to where I'm not doing it and we can be together. But it's hard because I don't have the same priorities as my wife. I don't have the same priorities as my neighbor. I don't have the same priorities as my daughter's best friend's parents that knock off on Friday and take their kids to the amusement park, that do all of these field trips and show up as the chaperone. That's unfortunately not a priority of mine. And look at that. I said unfortunately, and I hate that because that's not fair to me. That's a choice that I'm making. And to me, you got to stop comparing. And I feel like that's the only word that I can use is I'm choosing to put forth the effort into my business for my family right now. So someday down the road, we have a stable financial future. We have a company that my daughters could be proud of and maybe step into. And that's the same thing that farmers are doing, whether they openly say it or not, is they want that opportunity for their kid to say, I'm coming back. I want to do this. Or I'm proud that my dad has this farm, even though I'm going to go and be an attorney or whatever it is. There's a lot of weight that we put on our shoulders. And unfortunately, having said this out loud, I think a lot of it's just due to comparison.
I know for myself, it was incredible. Our daughter was born in the first week of December. She's 7 now. And to be perfectly honest, from the first week of December till about the middle of February, it was kind of nice to be stuck on the couch under a warm baby. Like, oh no, I can't come, thaw out that water. Somebody has to sit with the baby. Oh, shucks. Somebody has to watch 6 more episodes of The Great British Bake Off and eat snacks and sit here with the baby. But I remember so vividly when lambing started, and, we've had sheep 15 years this year. And, it's been a lot of work and there's been a lot of real shit years. And my husband, especially, has worked really hard and I'm really proud of, what we're doing. And that first day that I remember I was standing in front of the kitchen sink, and like every good Midwestern farmhouse, our kitchen sink looks at the barn because that's how we build houses. And I could see my husband and my father-in-law walking into the sheep barn, and I was in the house with the baby. And it wasn't no, I'm just going to stay here, go on without me kind of a thing. I was washing bottles and listening to a screaming kid, and everybody else was getting to go out and have all the fun of being elbow deep in a sheep and, climbing around in placenta and doing all the shit work. And I remember just standing there sobbing because I would have given anything to be out there. And also, what kind of a mother is, having a meltdown about not getting to go stick her hand inside an animal, And the first time that we talked to a guest about this, and they said they had had basically the same experience of standing in front of that sink and watching everybody else go out to do the work without them and being so frustrated and sad about it, was so cathartic to me to hear other people saying, yeah, it sucks because we put all this work in and then we're supposed to just, slam on the brakes. And, it's pretty easy to be happy with being trapped when it's shitty and cold and there's nothing good going on outside anyway. But once there's something you want to be doing and you're still stuck at home, it's a lot less fun.
There's so much truth in that. It is. I would say from a male perspective, for me, going into the bank at the time, there was guilt. There was also pride because here I am in a career and a role that I was really proud to be a part of. But if I stayed a minute past 5, I had guilt because my wife was at home all day taking care of our daughters during maternity leave, or was the one that picked them up from daycare when she went back to work. It's wild from both sides how unfair we are to ourselves because of, probably back to Elaine, something that we didn't say out loud. When I felt guilt when my wife started taking over some of the parts of Farm for Profit. Like, I don't want you, honey, to work until 10 p.m. like I do. Like, that's something I put on myself in my shoulders until we had the conversation about, oh no, she enjoys it. This is a new challenge for her. She's an incredibly smart woman, went and got her master's. She just always likes to develop. And the fact that she got to redesign the website, that's a new skill. And she was super excited to spend the time to develop something about herself that might provide value in the future. If not, it's her hobby. It became a new task. So until I had the ability to speak with her and she opened to me, I was feeling guilty. Like, here she is spending her night doing something that I should be doing and she should be doing something else that's fun. Oh, well, maybe that is fun. So it's probably a lot of unfairness, all of us, as we probably sit here and realize right now, we don't know what the other people expect.
That's a good reminder too that I'm due to have that conversation with my husband again, because we talk about this every few months that he'll do all the livestock chores because he doesn't want me to have to, which I appreciate, but I look forward to doing them because it's I work from home. I work a desk job 40 hours a week. It's kind of boring and I don't actually do anything. My kids are pretty sure I don't even have a job because, as my daughter says, well, Mommy, you just sit in front of the computer all day. Like, they pay me to do it, kid. I promise I am doing something. But, I look forward to actually going out and seeing the cows and seeing the sheep and actually doing something. But my husband, I think gets in this mindset of not wanting me to have to help. So then it feels to me like he's saying, well, I don't want you to help, and it's weird that neither of us is psychic. I don't think we got that gift at our wedding either, along with the magic bookkeeping skills, right?
Oh man. We all registered for the wrong stuff.
I seriously, I should have given up the China and asked for the magic bookkeeping skills and the psychic
Yeah.
powers.
And yeah, the telepathy. So, Tanner, I was listening to an episode where you mentioned that you and your wife, at one point at least, had been involved in the foster care system. Is that something that you're still doing, or is that something that you have learned from, or maybe would go back to, or what do you? I wasn't sure where you stood on that at this point.
Yeah, great question. So we are not currently licensed foster parents. We did let that license lapse. So we went about that during the stage of our girls' age to where uh, we felt that they viewed it as an extra friend in the house. Young, we don't know any different. The way we raised our kids is we're friends with everybody and play around. And we got to experience some really great lives and impact a couple of really great young children's lives, and just realized in our current nature that we're at those ages to where they understand something's different, and not bad different, but the explanation, and at the age of it's hard to understand. So we're currently not doing any foster care practices, but it could be something that we would go back to. Again, another one of those tasks that can be extremely frustrating day to day. There isn't that instant gratification, but extremely rewarding when you get to the finality of your responsibility. And even then, it might not be finality. You have the option to stay in contact and move forward. But that's probably the time period in our lives to where my wife and I became closer and had that ability we had to tell each other what we felt and thought, and had expectations, because boy, were they different. It's not, you don't do foster care for an appearance in the community that you're a good person. To not worth it. The challenges that come with raising somebody who's not your bloodline is something that anybody who ever does and has ever done that deserves medals, awards, prizes, whatever it is, because it's not easy. But when you can get yourself into a position to where you understand the role that you play, and for me, different than my wife, I compartmentalized it as a job. I probably take some flack over that, but to me, that's what made it work for me. My job was to make sure this kid was safe and fed and clothed and provided opportunities. And that made it a lot easier for me when they didn't connect to me emotionally, because that's hard. You can have your own kids and they can act disappointed or really be disappointed when you're disappointed. They're sad. When somebody doesn't have an emotional tie to you like that, and you have to discipline or tell them that you're disappointed, who cares? Who are you? Why are you doing this? It provides a lot of perspective.
So, Tanner, talking about the ages and stages of your kids, you said your girls are 8 and 10. Is that right?
Yes.
My kids are 7 and 6 in 2 days, which I cannot wrap my head around. Do your girls still think you're cool?
Yes.
I feel like we're right. When they're little, they think you're just the best thing in the world, and losing that is going to be killer. Because I can already see sometimes they're like, Mom, so weird.
Oh, my daughters hate my dad jokes. I'm the funniest one on the podcast, and I'm gonna make sure Dave and Corey hear that. We might have to ask you for the audio and the video so I can send that to them.
We'll ask our editor to put it right in the title.
Yeah, there, that's right.
Tanner, it's the funny one.
And that, to me, my daughters hate my jokes. Dad, quit giving bad jokes. But that's fine. Because at this point, yes, they still do ask me to coach their teams. They still do ask me to do daddy-daughter dances. So I feel like I'm still in the cool dad category. But maybe some of their friends help them with that, because I try to put myself in a position. But yes, when that goes away, that'll be a big flip in our household with two daughters, and all of a sudden I may not see them as often as they retire to their bedrooms and their phones whenever they get one, and create that extra life of theirs.
I've got some teens, so I hate to be the parent who says just wait, but you already said it. It's coming someday. It just depends. Yeah, it depends on the kids. It could come earlier or later, depending on who you're working with. So you already mentioned that you're someone who worked a lot of years on the bank, and I know that's something that Katie and I have talked a lot about is financial literacy and how we, encourage our kids to look at money in healthy ways. But how do you do that? Do you have any things that you're doing in your household or things that you have that you feel like would work for especially farm families when you were trying to teach our kids to be responsible with money and how to think about money?
Yeah. So for us, we initially opened them a bank account, and that was something that grandma and grandpa and we could put money in and that kind of stuff. But what has really helped us is I make them come with me to the bank to put money into their account. And I don't let them keep very much money at home, which forces us to go back to the bank and take money out of their bank account. So starting to give them that perspective of, okay, this is where I put my money. It's not a jar. It's not a underwear drawer or whatever you want to say. It's a bank. Oh,
I feel judged, Tanner. I feel judged. I'm just saying.
I was going to say mattress, and then
the bank's far away, Katie.
Yes, and then come back to pull it back out again. So giving them some perspective there, but then we don't do a steady allowance. Like you get this every week because you do the laundry and whatever. However, if we get into a point to where it would make sense if they want to come to the farm and help feed, or they want to complete a set of challenges, we will reward them with earnings and then provide them an opportunity to go spend it, to give them an idea that, okay, you found something that is more than the $20 that you have. I don't pitch in the extra. Every once in a while, right? Vacation, I'll throw some in on top, or I'll make sure the cashier has enough money. But ultimately, I have a pretty firm line that if you went with the expectation that your kid is going to buy something with their own money, I don't supplement it, because I don't want them to think in the future, I want this $200 pair of tennis shoes and I don't have the money for it. Dad will buy it for me. I want the opportunity to surprise them and do that, but I don't want it to be an expectation.
From the people that you've talked to on the show, do you have some perspectives of how people, as their kids get older, have incorporated the financial aspect into their relationships with their kids when it comes to kids who are, getting older and starting to do regular chores and that kind of thing?
Yeah, so what seems to be most common now is the use of a debit card, because debit cards get declined. Debit cards only work if the money is in the bank account. And that also is a way that you can kind of control it rather than handing them $100 bill. If you only want them to take $20 to the football game and you don't always want to have cash on you, you can transfer $20 with your cell phone and go that route. But some of the examples that we have is, if you've got a clock in, clock out situation for farm employees, have your kids start doing that as well. You may not pay them directly translated upon the hours that they work or something along those lines, but giving them the full on, this is my area of responsibility. Oh, you forgot to clock out? Well, now we need to back figure into this and find out, did you leave at 4? Did you quit at 10, or whatever it was, to kind of get them prepped for what life is.
Yeah, that's a good point. I know for our older kids, we don't have a clock in and out system, but they have every employee has a calendar that they're supposed to track their hours on. So at the end of the month, they need to submit their farm hours to Dad, who's the bookkeeper, and they get half of their wages they get credited for. They can take that in cash, and half goes into their bank account. So at this point, our kids don't have access to their bank account. Well, our older ones do, but the younger ones don't have access to their bank accounts because that's for saving. And then kind of their credit is the tally on my phone because we don't go to the bank often enough. So, but yeah, everyone has to figure it out in a way that works. But yeah, it's good to give them that accountability, and also, that responsibility of, if you don't track your hours, then it didn't happen. So we'll just, you don't get paid if you don't write it down.
I was about to make a comment about it being a good way to prepare them for keeping time cards for jobs, but then it occurs to me that probably nobody still does paper time cards for work in most, for those of us who grew up with the having to figure out 1/6 of an hour and, break that all down into the good old days.
So Tana, you already kind of mentioned one of your biggest parenting struggles these days, but what is your favorite part of the age and stage that your kids are at right now?
I think seeing them succeed, it's fun. Like we were playing basketball with my oldest in the driveway, waiting for my wife and my youngest to get back from gymnastics, and uh, she was way far away from the basket from where she normally shoots from, but has been watching Caitlin Clark in the NCAA tournament and knows that Caitlin shoots from a long ways away. But we're not Hawkeye fans. I'm a Cyclone diehard. With your listeners that are from Iowa are totally going to get that. I see Katie smiling. So I'm assuming she's...
You're going to get run right out of town if you tell them you're a Hawkeyes fan over there.
And but she didn't give up, and she made them. And it was just cool to see her succeed. And that was a little example, but it's everything from my youngest moved up last week to the bronze level of gymnastics, goes every single week to practice and does what the coach asks and continues to develop skills. And seeing those little wins is my favorite part because I didn't do it directly, but there's something in there, the way that they were raised to not give up, to push forward. And that's the current state of my favorite right now.
So what is a piece of parenting advice that you've either learned through your own experience or someone shared with you that you've kind of held on to that you would want to share with someone else?
Yeah, we did an episode with Ben. I should have remembered Ben's last name. Ben with the Business of Fatherhood. And just because the episode is titled The Business of Fatherhood doesn't mean that it isn't going to apply to all parents. But in there, he issued a challenge that said, go home and tomorrow morning tell your child that you are going to have 20 minutes of one-on-one time after school. And you commit to that. And when you come home, you ask them what they want to do for their 20 minutes. You don't tell them. You don't say, hey, let's go play a board game. Let's go shoot baskets in the driveway. Let's go. Don't give them the idea. Have them start coming up with things for you to do and then do them. It's 20 minutes, right? We can give up 20 minutes. And when he told me that during that episode, I was thinking, no way, I can't do this. And started doing that. And it amazed me the ideas that they would come up with, because they will over time find and look for things that you enjoy doing. And it's fascinating to watch their opinion of what they think you enjoy. For example, shooting baskets in the driveway last night was not my idea, but we had showered and we had done everything that we were supposed to do, and we were just waiting for mom and sis to come home. And I said, hey, we've got 20 minutes. What do you want to do? I had just provided the opportunity for her to go out and do that. And if you as a parent, it's not every day, right? You don't need to do this every day, but you're going to very quickly, at least I did, observe what your kids think of you, good or bad, right? They may throw some things in your face and you're not going to like it, but you're going to find the things that they enjoy doing with you. And those are the things, in my opinion, that I'm hoping my girls and I continue to do when I'm not cool anymore, is we still get that time to go play baskets and shoot baskets in the driveway or whatever the task is.
That's a really good idea. And asking it when they're, like you said, when they're still young enough that they come up with ideas and they want to do it, versus waiting until they're older and realizing that, if you didn't make those times available when they're younger, then they've already figured out, they don't really.
Goes back to, I think we've all seen the old tale that the kid that asks dad how much he makes for a living, and dad continues to delay and not tell him exactly what he makes, and finally asks the kid why. And he goes back and says, well, Dad, I've got $28 in my savings account. Is that enough to buy an hour of your time? Because he knows that the boss is paying him by the hour, and the boss got priority. I mean, it's obviously a very sad story, but puts a lot of things into perspective. And again, it's not to be unfair to parents, because we're hard enough on ourselves, but just those little pieces can add up.
So, Tanner, we ask all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And the category can be real or made up.
A made up category right now is I could dominate talking and storytelling. Obviously, I'm not at a shortage of words. As a kid, I wanted to dominate the swine category or woodworking. But yes, if I could just walk in and make up a category and take home a blue ribbon or a purple ribbon, it would probably be talking.
That's a good one for a podcaster to go for. I like it. So we'll go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. So as listeners know, you can submit your cussing and discussing for us to play on the show, either on our speak pipe or by email. Katie, what are you cussing and or discussing this week?
Well, Arlene, now I got to come up with the name because I just lost it. I am going to cuss finding out about something you really like and then realizing that everybody else already knows about it.
Being late to the game?
Yeah, I read an article about a musician today in the New York Times because I'm that cool. Find out about all the hip stuff in the New York Times. Guy's name is Wyatt Flores. He's a 22-year-old ranch kid from Oklahoma who is blowing up big in red dirt roots country music. So I'm listening. I'm real excited. My husband's super into music. And I mean, I'm never going to win. I don't know why I bother trying. But I was like, have you heard of this kid? He goes, oh yeah, I've been listening to him for a long time. Well, not only am I uncool enough that I'm getting music recommendations from the New York Times, but you already knew about it and you just didn't think to tell me?
Didn't even share his playlist.
Yeah. Like, it feels like that hipster thing, about you could only like stuff that nobody else likes. And that the minute that, like, one other person likes it, then you can't like it anymore.
Yeah, that's off your list again.
Well, cool.
But with music, that doesn't count. If you like it, you like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Taylor Swift is probably pretty good proof of that. I don't know too many people who've decided they don't like her just because she's popular.
Yeah, no, she's too popular.
So, Tanner, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
All right. So my cuss and discuss is I love social media, and I love what social media has done for Farm for Profit. What I don't like is people on social media. My cuss and discuss is those that choose to use our platform or a video clip. Right? It's less than 60 seconds of our show to take that as their soapbox and annihilate the comment section with their opinion. I love opinions. Absolutely, that drives everything that we do in media land, social media, YouTube, podcasting. Everything Farm for Profit does is full of opinions, and then we try to back it with facts. But those people, the keyboard warriors, right? That's what the cool people call them, keyboard warriors. Oh, I want to cuss them. I mean, I love it because I know and am calloused enough that is going to boost our exposure. I know that if there is comment after comment after comment going on, that we are going to have a great reach. But it is still frustrating. I mean, you go back 6 months and we had a story about an 8-year-old who is renting, I think, a 10 or 12 acre plot from his uncle or grandpa and is buying the seed for himself, and that the seed company realized that the birth date was a young kid, and that they were concerned the young kid didn't understand the responsibility of seed traits. So they flew out an executive to tell him how he needs to legally sell his crop, so on and so forth. But we had to shut the comments off. People were so mean. Well, that kid's not paying for it by himself. Dad's footing the bill. That. No, you don't know that. You're not in this 8-year-old's shoes that maybe sold his 4-H calf, and dad gave him the opportunity to do that and kept his money, and now the kid's using his money to rent, whatever it is. We choose to promote our episode using short clips like that. But my cuss today is those people who take over a comment section and don't go in depth to get the whole story. If their facts are founded and their comments are legitimate, happy, great, thank you, appreciate your contribution. But if you aren't going to take the time to go listen to a 45-minute episode that praises youth in agriculture, whatever the example is, back off.
I feel like, too, I know plenty of farms where the parents stake the first calf or the first round of seed or whatever. And honestly, if you're not paying for the kid's seed, what the hell do you care? You're not paying for it, it's none of your business. Anyway, oof. Arlene, what do you have to discuss?
I think on the topic of money, I'm just going to discuss just a couple weeks ago, my 13-year-old who last summer had did a bunch of lawn cutting, started out with his grandmother's lawn because she had decided she was going to hire someone. And when he found out that she was going to hire someone, he asked if it could be him. So he used our lawnmower and cut grandma's grass last year from across the road. And then when a neighbor saw him cutting her grass, they asked if he could cut theirs as well. So he was doing the rounds with the lawnmower, and he's the kind of kid who saved up all the dollars and was counting his pennies, and our kids do get an allowance, so he was saving up his allowance money, his farm chore money, and made a big purchase a couple of weeks ago. And it was so cool to see him get to that point of having a goal that he was working towards and be able to spend his money on something that he was really, really proud of buying. And it was interesting too, because his 16-year-old older brother is more of the I have money, I need to spend it now variety. And even though that's his personality, it's something that we're trying to encourage him to work on. But I think it's also, it's a good lesson for him to see that his brother was able to use those funds for something a little bit bigger and splashier than just the everyday purchases, or going out for lunch from high school. At the high school, they can walk across the road and get lunch out or something like that, where he spends his money more in that way, and his younger brother is more of a saver. So it's both kind of the interesting dynamic of how siblings, raised in the same home, treat money differently, and watching your kid be able to work towards a goal was pretty cool. So that's my discussing for this week.
Hey, I married one of those, and I was like his sibling, and we work out just fine. And people do change, because now I feel like there's sometimes it's flip flopped in my household, and my wife's the saver now, and I want to go spend it. So uh, everybody can flip flop.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it depends and sometimes it takes having that goal to work towards too, right? If you don't have the idea of a big ticket item, then why save? Why not enjoy in the moment? And there's value in both of those things, right? You don't have to save every penny and deprive yourself. We don't need to live that way as adults either, that we never treat ourselves. But yeah, if you've got something big you're working towards, then you have to prioritize those things too. So yeah, neither is all good or all bad, for sure. So we both want to thank you, Tanner, for joining us here on the podcast today. Can you remind our listeners where to find you online, both for the short form and for the full episodes?
Absolutely. So Farm for Profit is spelled with a number 4 right in the middle. FARM, the number 4, PROFIT. That will get you anywhere. If you want to go to www.farm4profit.com, it will take you to all of our links. But if you're a YouTube watcher, you type in farm, you get to the number 4, and it pre-fills the rest of it. So both a blessing and a curse to have a title that way, because you always have to tell people it's the number 4, but it pops up really quickly because nobody else is as dumb as we are and put a number 4 in the middle of their company name. Based upon that, then you can find all of us as hosts. And I hope that we can get Corey connected with you guys as well for an episode down the road, because I think there's a family connection there, and that will be another great opportunity for your listeners to have some cool insights, because he and Dave are both really neat guys, which is why we're successful. But yes, we are Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook. I think we have a Threads. I don't know how to use it, but I think we have a Threads. And then each one of us have our personal accounts too. So you can find us everywhere. And then if you like podcasts, the cool thing about Farm for Profit is we put a show out Monday and Thursday. We've been given the nickname the Mullet of Agriculture Podcast, because we've got business in the front of the week and a party in the back.
I love it.
Yeah, we've got over 350 episodes. So if you don't like it, skip to the next one. You can go ahead and find somebody that you enjoy. If you're Canadian and you want to listen to fellow Canadians, awesome. We've got those coming out. We've got a cool one. If you're out on Twitter, Carl Armstrong is probably going to air the same time that this episode airs, or within a pretty close time period there. You said you weren't too far away outside of New York. We've got a former New Yorkian that comes out in May as well. So there's a wide variety of guests. And like I tell people all the time, you can't listen to them all. So if you don't like it, move on to the next one. So I'd rather you be happy and have some fun that way.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. It was great meeting you and chatting with you today.
Yeah, appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Tanner.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.